كَدَأْبِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ. Theirs is like the custom of the people of Fir'aun. Whose? The people of Mecca. The way they have been destroyed, similarly the people of Fir'aun were also destroyed. كَدَأْبِ. What does ka mean? Like. And da'b is from the root letters, dal, hamza, ba. And da'b is basically, literally it means to walk continuously. And from this, it is to engage in an action continuously, constantly. You understand? When a person is constantly doing something, when a person is constantly walking, constantly on the phone, constantly writing, when a person does something constantly, it becomes his habit, his usual practice, norm. Isn't it so? It becomes his norm. So, their norm, their way, their custom is like that of the people of Fir'aun. What was the custom of the people of Fir'aun? That they continued to deny the message. They continued to oppose the messenger, Musa a.s. They continued to do injustice against the believers, the Bani Israel. And then what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pulled them out of their homes. Isn't it so? And they came out with a lot of pride, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَأَخْرَجْنَاهُمْ, we brought them out from their houses and their palaces and their treasures and all that they had amassed, and all the people went forth. Because you wonder that all the people went forth, it wasn't just the army, everybody left. Each and every person. Because of which the entire nation of Fir'aun was destroyed. Because you may wonder, the entire civilization, what happened to it? Everybody left. Why did everybody leave? In their arrogance and pride that all of us are going to go catch Bani Israel. And when they went, they reached the middle of the sea, all of them were drowned. Similarly, what did Abu Jahl do? What did the people of Mecca do? Was it just a few people who were sent to fight the Muslims? No. So many of them. 1,000 people. And amongst them, so many leaders. The best people. They left. And when they left, they didn't just take a little bit with them. They took with them a lot of their money. A lot of their resources. Why? Because like Abu Jahl said, so that this day is a memorable day. This day becomes a memorable day. They went to defeat the Muslims, but what happened? Everything turned against them. All the money they had taken, it fell into the hands of who? The Muslims. Similarly, Fir'aun, what happened to him? He took everything with him, all of his people. All the people were destroyed, and along with him, everything else was destroyed as well. So their practice, their custom, their end is just like the end of who? Ali Fir'aun, the people of Fir'aun. Who also persistently rejected the messenger, opposed the messenger, dared to fight against the messenger, and they were destroyed. وَالَّذِينَ, and those people who, مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, before them. Before who? Before the people of Fir'aun. Who was that? The people of Nuh, the people of Ad, the people of Thamud. What was their da'b? That كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. Their custom was that they denied the ayat of Allah. فَأَخَذَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. So Allah seized them because of their sins. إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَوِيٌّ. Indeed, Allah is strong, and He is also شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. He is also severe in retribution. So the consequence of the people of Mecca have ended up with, very similar to what the previous people ended up with. ذَلِكَ, that is, meaning this punishment, this destruction that was inflicted upon the disbelievers on the day of Badr, is why? بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ, is because indeed Allah لَمْ يَكُ مُغَيِّرًا نِعْمَةً. He is not one who changes a blessing. مُغَيِّر. Mughayyir is one who does taghyir. What does taghyir mean? From ghayn ya ra, to alter, to change something. What does it mean? To alter, to modify. Mughayyir is one who modifies, one who alters, one who exchanges. So Allah would not change ni'matan, a blessing. Which blessing? That He had blessed ala qawmin, upon a people. So a people on whom Allah had bestowed a favor. What could that favor be? Wealth, great numbers, many leaders, freedom, prestige, power, skill. So a blessing that Allah has given to a people, Allah never changes it. Allah never substitutes it with something harmful, with something bad, حتى until يغيروا ما بأنفسهم, until the people change what is with themselves. Until the people change their own condition. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ, and Allah is hearing and He's knowing. What does it mean by this? That if Allah has given a blessing to a people, it's not that Allah has a bias against them all of a sudden, that He just takes away that blessing and inflicts harm on those people. No. It's when those people do something wrong themselves that they bring about the punishment of Allah on themselves. It's their own wrong actions that cause for that blessing to be taken away from them. It's not that Allah is unjust towards them. It's not that Allah has a bias against them. No, nothing like that. It's their own doing. It's their own fault. Because if you look at it, the people of Fir'aun, you wonder, they had such a great civilization. So much skill, so many people, so much wealth, so much resources. Why was all of that taken away? Is this the injustice of Allah? It's not the injustice of Allah. Allah did not change their state. It's they themselves who caused those blessings to be taken away from them. We learned earlier that when they continuously denied Musa a.s., Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent one punishment upon them after the other. Isn't it so? The tufan and several types of creatures, the blood, so many things were sent upon them. Why? So that they would change. Allah had given them the blessings, but when they persisted on their kufr, their blessings were replaced with what? With what? Punishment. Similarly, the people of Mecca, they enjoyed many blessings. But when they themselves turned hostile against the messenger, then they met their own destruction. So they brought their destruction upon themselves. It's not Allah's injustice against them. So what does this ayah teach us? That if a people have been given a blessing and they remain on obedience to Allah, then that blessing will remain with them. But if they have been given a blessing and they begin disobeying Allah, then that blessing is going to be taken away from them. Because we learn in the Quran, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you're grateful, I will increase the blessing for you. Not that I will take it away from you. Similarly, we learn in Surah Al-Shura, ayah 30, وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. And whatever strikes you of disaster, it is for what your own hands have earned. You have brought it upon yourselves. إِنْ أَحْسَنْتُمْ أَحْسَنْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ وَإِنْ أَسَأْتُمْ فَلَهَا. Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 7. That if you do good, you do good for yourselves. And if you do evil, you do it for yourselves. So, the conclusion is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a blessing to people and it's taken away from them, then they should reflect on their actions. They should reflect on what they have been doing. Do you understand? If Allah has given a blessing to someone and that blessing is taken away from them, that blessing is taken away from them. And it could be any type of blessing. It could be money. It could be the love of a person. It could be the friendship with another. It could be freedom. It could be happiness. Good health. If it's taken away from a person, it's quite possible that it's because of his own actions. Because Allah does not change the blessing until people themselves change their situation. كَدَأْبِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ. Theirs is like the custom of the people of Fir'aun. The case of the Meccan unbelievers is just like the case of who? The people of Fir'aun. وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. And those people before them. Who were they? The people of Nuh, Lut, the people of Ad, the people of Thamud. What did they do? What was their custom? That كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ. They denied the ayat of their Lord. فَأَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. So we destroyed them because of their own sins. Allah gave them blessings. But when they committed sins, Allah destroyed them because of those sins. وَأَغْرَقْنَا. And we drowned. آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ. The people of Fir'aun. وَكُلٌّ كَانُوا ظَالِمِينَ. And all of them were oppressors. All of them were wrongdoers. They brought this upon themselves. Allah was not unjust towards them. إِنَّ شَرَّ الدَّوَابِّ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Indeed, the worst of living creatures in the sight of Allah. The worst of living creatures. Not شَرُّ النَّاسِ. Not the worst of all people. What has been said? شَرَّ الدَّوَابِ, the worst of all creatures in the sight of Allah are who? الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those people who disbelieved. فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, and then they don't believe. Why? What is it that makes them so disgraced in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That they're lower than the rest of creatures. Because as we learned earlier, that when a person does not use the faculties that Allah has given him, the eyes, the ears, the heart, when he's not being a human being, you understand? When Allah has given him the abilities and he's not using them, then he becomes the lowest of the low. He becomes worse than other animals even. Because other animals, at least they're being animals. They're using the abilities that Allah has given them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They stay within their limits. But human beings, when they don't use their abilities, then they prove themselves worse than other creatures. Especially when a person rejects the ayat of Allah. Especially when a person does kufr. Generally when people deny, when people do kufr, they think they're very smart. Being an atheist today is a sign of intelligence. Being very smart, being very learned. But what does Allah say? Worst of creatures. Worst of creatures. Because an animal even, what does it do? It does only what it's required to do. So you as a human being whom Allah has given aql, whom Allah has given intelligence, you're behaving worse than an animal. So, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, they don't believe. We learn in Surah Al-Furqan, ayah 44, that أَمْ تَحْسَبُ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ أَوْ يَعْقِلُونَ, or do you think that most of these people hear or listen, hear or reason? Do you think that most of these people, they hear? Or they use their mind? No, they don't. إِنْهُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ, they're not except like grazing livestock. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا, rather they're more astray in their way. Because at least the animals, the grazing livestock, they're using their ears. When the shepherd calls them, they respond. But these people, when the messenger calls them, they don't respond. When Allah calls them, they don't respond. They're much worse than animals. And if you look at it, what's the main concern of an animal? What's the main concern? What he's supposed to eat? Where he's supposed to live? When he's supposed to migrate? Right? This is what the animals are concerned about. Similarly, a person who does not have a purpose in his life, and that purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then anything else that he's doing is what? Animal-like. For example, a person goes to school, studies for years and years, then goes, makes money. Why? Why? So that he can feed himself. So that he can get some pleasure. So that he can have some fun. Isn't it so? Just like an animal. It's just that you went through a much harder process compared to an animal. But at the end of the day, the process is very similar. Very similar. Both are struggling. Both are traveling. Both are searching for what? Food, pleasure, fun, excitement. And at the end, both are turned to dust. Both are in the ground. What's the difference between a human being and an animal then? If a human being does not use his mind, his reason that Allah has given him, and he does not use that to find Allah, to worship Allah, to serve Allah. الَّذِينَ عَاهَدْتَ مِنْهُمْ, who are these people especially? Who are described in the previous ayah? They are those people whom عَاهَدْتَ مِنْهُمْ, you made a treaty with them. عَاهَدْتَ is from the root letters Ain, Ha, Dal, Ahd. You made a treaty with them. But what do these people do? ثُمَّ يَنْقُضُونَ عَهْدَهُمْ, then they break their promise. When? فِي كُلِّ مَرَّةٍ, in every situation, in every time. Every time they break their covenant, their treaty that you made with them. وَهُمْ لَا يَتَّقُونَ, and they don't fear Allah at all. So if a person continues to break his promises, what does it show? What does it show? He does not have taqwa of Allah. He does not fear Allah. Who are these people? الَّذِينَ عَاهَدْتَ مِنْهُمْ, it refers to the Yahud of Medina. And Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu says, these are the Yahud of Medina, especially the Banu Qurayza. What was the promise? What was the covenant that they had made with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? As you may have learned, that when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, he made a treaty. the Mithaq of Medina. And it was made with who? Between the Muslims, the different tribes, as well as the Mushrikeen who were in Medina, as well as the Yahud of Medina. And it was a treaty in which all the different groups were bound with certain responsibilities, and they were required to fulfill all of them so that the different groups could live in harmony in one place. Because when there are different people following different religions, different cultures, different practices, when they're living together, then there must be some pact that creates harmony in the society. Otherwise, constantly there will be conflict. So the Prophet ﷺ made a treaty with all of these groups. And one of the clauses was that if someone attacks, then all the groups of Medina would join forces and defend. Isn't it so? All the groups of Medina, all different people will join forces and they will defend Medina together, regardless of who the enemy is coming to attack, whether it's all of them or a particular group. But in practice, what would the Yahud do? They would go against the treaty. They would not side with the believers, rather, they would side with who? Those people who were attacking the Muslims. So, الَّذِينَ عَاهَدْتَ مِنْهُمْ ثُمَّ يَنْقُضُونَ عَهْدَهُمْ. Then every time they break their promise, بِكُلِّ مَرَّةٍ وَهُمْ لَا يَتَّقُونَ, and they don't fear Allah. Instead of siding with the Muslims, who would they side with? The disbelievers. So over here, what did they do at the Battle of Badr? They gave weapons to the Quraysh. They gave weapons to who? To the Quraysh. And when they were asked, why did you do this? They would say, oh, it was a mistake. Renew the treaty. It was a mistake. فَإِمَّا تَثْقَفَنَّهُمْ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides the Muslims with regards to dealing with them. That if you gain dominance over them, where fil harb, in war. تَثْقَفَنَّ is from the root letters ثَقَفَ, ثَقْف. And ثَقْف is to perfectly perceive something. It is to see something, to get hold of something, to fulfill something with perfection and expertise. You understand? To perceive something, to get a hold of something, to have control over it, to accomplish a task. How? With perfection, meaning perfectly, as well as to gain mastery over something, to gain control and power over something. So if you gain power over them, if you gain dominance over them, who does them refer to? Who does them refer to? The Yahud of Medina. Where fil harb, in battle. If you ever encounter them in battle, and you get to fight against them, if in future something like this ever happens, then what should you do? فَشَرِّدْ بِهِمْ مَنْ خَلْفَهُمْ. Then disperse by means of them those behind them. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ, that perhaps they will be reminded. What does it mean by that? فَشَرِّدْ. Sharrid is from the root letters Sheen, Ra, Dal. And Shirad is when a horse bolts away, when a horse runs away. And Tashreed al-Ba'id, is when a camel runs away. So basically it is to deal with someone in such a way that other people run away. Do you understand? Like for example, there's a group of children, okay? And they're all being very mischievous. One of them does something wrong, and you give him a timeout. Or you tell him, okay, you're out of the classroom. So what's going to happen? Other people, other kids are not going to dare to do what he's done. Earlier we read the word nakal. What is nakal? Exemplary punishment. But sharrid is to chase other people away from doing what the person did. How? In the way that you deal with them. In the manner that you deal with them. So sharrid bihim man khalfahum. Those people who are behind them, meaning in generation after them, or other tribes, deal with these people in such a way that they don't dare to deceive you. They don't dare to betray you. Deal so severely with them in battle that other people become afraid. Set an example for the rest of the people. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ, so that they can take a lesson and they would not even dare to do something like what their predecessors have done. وَإِمَّا تَخَافَنَّ مِنْ قَوْمٍ. And if you have reason to fear from a people, what? خِيَانَةً, betrayal. إِمَّا تَخَافَنَّ. If you fear. And notice the word noon, the letter noon. What does it mean? Definitely. Meaning if you really have a reason to fear. If you really have a reason to fear. It's not just a wahm, it's not just an assumption or a thought, but you're very sure that from some other people, you think that they're going to betray you, khiyanatan. You fear betrayal from them. So for example, you've made a treaty with them, okay? And you know that they're heading towards betrayal. They're doing some things which are against the treaty. So you're very sure of betrayal from these people. You've made a treaty with them and he's breaking it. What are you supposed to do? Just pretend everything is okay? Is that what you should do? No, because if you do that, they're going to harm you. What's the objective of a treaty? So that the different groups can live in harmony. There is peace. There is no war. You've made a treaty with another group and you know that they're going to betray you. Then what should you do? Secretly plan against them? No. Fambid, then you throw back. Noon badal, nabada. What does nabada mean? To throw something away. So fambid ilayhim, so throw back towards them. What? The same retaliation, the ahd, the pact, ala sawa, upon equal terms. In other words, openly dissolve the treaty. Openly dissolve the treaty. It doesn't mean that if you know they're going against the treaty, you don't do anything about it. Because if you don't do anything about it, you're going to suffer. Or if they're going against the treaty, you also go against the treaty. No. If you know they're doing khiyana, then dissolve the treaty openly. Many times what happens? If two people have made an agreement to do something, one person goes against the conditions, the other person takes that as a license for what? Going against the conditions as well. They're not fulfilling their promise, I will also not fulfill my promise. They're not doing their job, even I will not do my job. Both of us are in equal terms. No. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to us? That if you know they're going against the treaty, dissolve the treaty. Finish it off, ala sawa, upon equal terms. What does it mean by equal terms? That you know the treaty is dissolved, and even he knows the treaty is dissolved. Both of them, both of you know. Why should you dissolve the treaty? Because inna Allah la yuhibbul kha'inin. Allah does not like those people who are treacherous. Don't think that if they're being deceptive, you can also be deceptive. If you do that, Allah will not love you. If Allah will not love you, He will not aid you. Then what will you do without Him? You are nothing without Him. You can never be successful without Him. So in this ayah, the beautiful teachings of Islam are given over here. That this is the akhlaq that Allah wants to instill in us. That Allah wants us to develop within ourselves. That don't be treacherous, even in war. Even in war, even in battle, don't be treacherous. What do we think? That everything is permissible in war. Right? You can be treacherous, you can be mean, you can do whatever. Everything is permissible. But rather, what do we learn from here? That Allah does not like the kha'ineen. Even when you are at conflict with another people, still don't go against the rules that Allah has given you. So if you want to nullify the treaty, if you want to come out of it, then openly dissolve it. There is an incident of Islamic history that is recorded in Musnad Ahmad, in which it is mentioned that Salim ibn Amir, he said that Muawiyah radhiyallahu anhu, he was leading an army when he was a Khalifa. He was leading an army in Roman lands. So, the Muslim Empire, then there was a Roman Empire, so he was leading an army in Roman lands. At a time, the peace treaty was valid. So there was a peace treaty between the Muslims and the Romans at that time. And he wanted to go closer to their forces so that when the treaty of peace ended, he could invade them immediately. Understand? So while the peace treaty was still applicable, what did he do? He prepared the army. So that as soon as the treaty is dissolved, they can go and attack them. So an old man riding his animal, when he found out, he said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Be honest and stay away from betrayal. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, whoever has a treaty of peace with the people, then he should not untie any part of it or tie it harder, meaning make more conditions, until the treaty reaches its appointed term. You cannot alter the treaty until it reaches the term. Or he should declare the treaty null and void so that they are both on equal terms. So it's not that you have the peace treaty and you're preparing for war. You cannot do that. It's not permissible. So when Muawiyah radhiyallahu anhu was informed of the Prophet ﷺ statement, he retreated. Immediately he retreated his armies. And they found later that that man was Amr ibn Ambasa, may Allah be pleased with him. So what do we learn from this ayah? That if you have a promise with someone, you have an agreement with someone, then you're not allowed to betray. Even if they are betraying. Even if they're betraying. An example could be a treaty, a covenant between who? A husband and a wife. What happens? The wife finds out the husband is deceiving me. The husband is lying to me. So she thinks, even I can lie to him. Even I can deceive him. The wife finds out the husband is not telling her things that are very important. So she thinks even she cannot tell him about things that are very important, necessary for him to know. Our behavior towards another should not be based on how they behave with us. This is not the way of a believer. Our behavior towards another should be on how Allah wants us to be. Like for example, when it comes to joining relationships, Sulatul Rahim, what does it mean? That if the other person is good to you, be good towards them? Is that ihsan? That's not ihsan, that's just equality. What is ihsan? That when the other is bad towards you, you do good towards him. This is what ihsan is. That is what Sulatul Rahim is. That you're trying to join relations with the other person, and he's not doing it. Generally we think, if they don't care, why should I care? No, you should care, because it's an obligation on you. And if you wish to end the covenant, if you wish to end the treaty, then do so openly and publicly, so that the other person is aware, on equal terms, so that no one suffers. Because if you do so secretly, then they will suffer. We'll listen to the recitation of these ayat.
With regards to ayat number 45, I was thinking that it applies all the steps that have been given to us, all the keys to success. These apply to us even as a Muslim ummah, because we are the chosen ummah and it's our responsibility to convey the message. So if we follow these steps, then we will be able to do it successfully, inshallah. And also in ayah number 53, we see that how our blessings are only taken away from us when we ourselves do something wrong. So I know somebody who, whenever a little things befell on them, they used to say it's magic. And now when they are learning the Quran, they say, oh, we should do more istighfar. Whenever difficulty comes their way, they think like maybe we are doing something wrong and we should increase in our istighfar.
Exactly.
So something we should all do and we should all convey to other people as well.
Yes. But when something wrong happens, we blame other people. Or we say it's their planning, it's their plotting against me, it's their jealousy against me. Or, we just say, okay, fine, whatever. Or we're indifferent to the situation. But the fact is that a believer, he is awake, he is alert at everything that happens to him. Right? He's not like the animal who does not know why his master tied him and why his master freed him. Right? He reflects on every situation. So whenever there is a problem, whenever there is a difficulty, the believer always does istighfar. That perhaps it's because of my sins that my ni'mah has been taken away from me. Perhaps it's because of my own wrongdoing that my blessing has been changed into a disaster for me. Everything was fine, I was so happy, life was so good, and all of a sudden, there are so many problems now. So, whenever we're in a difficulty, we should increase in our istighfar.
I was just thinking being a student of Quran and helping out the others as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us opportunity. It's a blessing as well right now. And though these verses are of course in the particular context of the Badr, but I was thinking how can I take a lesson for myself here. So while we are here, make sure we instill all these beautiful abilities that Allah has mentioned in us, that the sabat, be firm, and then do zikr of Allah a lot. This zikr of Allah only helps you to get the sabat.
Recite more Quran.
Yes, and then if you keep reciting, only then you are able to remember what are the commandments of Allah and Rasul, and then you are able to do the implementation. And this never happens until you don't get the patience. So sabat doesn't happen until you don't have the patience. Exactly. And finally what it hit me, inna sharra dawabi indallahi allazina kafaru fahum la yu'minun. While you're coming across to the dawah, you need all these abilities. Out there is so many people, they're in worse condition. So feel good for them, have a good feeling for them, affection for them in your heart, and instill all these abilities so that you could help them out as well there. And remember the shaitan in the middle, because I was thinking till the Surah Al-Anfal begin, he's not here until now, because in the Surah Araf we have been in detail got the introduction how worst he works. So remember, he will come all the way in your ways to test you how firm you are. Always recognize him.
Assalamu alaikum. I was thinking about the verse where Shaitan is saying, I can see what you can't see, and, like where he leaves them alone by themselves. So that ayah is very good for da'wah, because it sort of tells people that, the one you're relying on so much right now, he's not going to be there when time comes to actually get retribution. And he's not going to be there to support you, because he's going to be like, I'm free of responsibility. Like, I'm done, right? So it's like really good to show them this sort of thing.
And also for ourselves, that every time we're tempted to do something, think of it, this is from shaitan. And on the day of judgment, he's going to abandon me. Because generally what happens, people say to us, do it, I'll take the blame for it. I'll pay the price for it. People say that even in dunya. I'll get the blame for it, I'll pay the price for it, you don't need to worry about it. I'll tell your mom, I'll defend you. Right? Just let her talk to me, and that's it. But the thing is, people who encourage you to do something wrong, when you're in trouble, they don't come to help you. They don't come to help you. They don't come to aid you at all.
Assalamu alaikum. I was just thinking about how Prophet Muhammad was given the dream of seeing the people who are less than him. And it just shows the importance of visualizing your end result. And it kind of helps you. For example, like some of the sports players, they tell you stories of when they got injured and how they got back into their game. And they tell you how they visualized each step. And again, inshallah, this would help us.
Over here, definitely it was a dream. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him that dream. And sometimes it happens with people as well, that before the test they have a dream that, this ayah is coming in the test, or this question is coming in the test. It's help from Allah. Right? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.